Story 1. Okay, so one of many paranormal events from my life. Let me start this off by saying that I am a practicing pagan, 34 female. I have practiced the craft since middle school. So one night my mother, friend, and two cousins, all female, built a fire and were participating in a seance together. We were calling on our ancestors and the spirits to help us with our personal manifestations. My father was intoxicated, and he barged into our circle and started condemning Lucifer, stating, "GD Lucifer to hell, burn in hell Satan." He said other things about Lucifer and the other fallen angels. Basically, he was taunting them, stating that he was more powerful and that Lucifer couldn't touch him or hurt him in any way. That day before the seance, my friend, cousins, and I broke into the house next door as the man that lived there had passed away and the house was vacant for months before this day. We found some lighter and other things in the home that we stole and brought back to my home and stashed in me bedroom. After my father interrupted the seance, we ended it and thanked the ancestors and spirits for their help in our endeavors, plus apologized to them for my father's actions/words. This did nothing to help. The very next morning I awoke to a fire raging on the bottom bunk of my bed. The only room burned up was mine, and it was completely destroyed. Nothing in the room could be saved. My brother and I lost everything we owned. The family had our suspicions that my younger cousin started the fire. We was correct in this thinking. Years later, as adults, that cousin and I started talking about the fire. She said that morning she woke up to what sounded like scratching noises coming from under the bed. She said that she then felt a heavy presence and that it felt like she was forced out of her body. She then was floating above herself in the room and watched as her body set a piece of paper ablaze. When that fire went out, she then watched herself drenched some rolled up papers in perfume and set it on fire. She then just dropped it onto the bed and watched as the mattress caught fire with me on the top bunk asleep. She says something took over her body and made her set a fire. She was then back into her body. She tried to wake me, but I was essentially dead to the world. I'm a heavy sleeper. It wasn't until my arm slid between the top bunk and the wall that I felt the heat from the fire and woke up. I looked at the fire, then laid back down. It took a sec for my brain to process what I just saw. When my brain registered what was happening, I jumped from the bed and started yelling about the fire. We all made it out safely, but to this day I have always thought, what if my arm hadn't slipped into that crack and felt the heat? I would have been burned badly or died from the flames/smoke inhalation. I know in my heart that the fire was in direct relation to my father doing what he did during our seance the night before. He was shown he wasn't as powerful as he thought and that he could be hurt physically, mentally, and emotionally. Story 2. Humboldt County. I lived in Northern California. It was beautiful and amazing, but I lived with these Grateful Dead hippies and they were cool. Anyway, I worked in Old Town Eureka, very known for its haunted energy, but I worked at the Best Western. I'd see shadow figures all over the property. I asked my supervisor about it. He looked at me like I was a psycho. Anyway, the locals would always talk about spiritual entities that are in Humboldt. It's odd because I would hear so much about it and I had only seen strange paranormal stuff on the property. Anyway, stuff started getting very spooky. In the end, I was in the jacuzzi room just doing a log for the pool chemicals and the pressure gauge for the jacuzzi exploded, and it was definitely paranormal. Water went everywhere, scared the shit out of. Anyway, I would also water the plants I was watering and the heat lamp just suddenly went out and the white smoke just lingered as it was an entity it turned back onto, but also I'd ride my bike from Eureka to Arcata and white owls would fly over my head every night. That was pretty cool, but I got home, I had a bad feeling at work. I was actually freaking out. My night watch lady was a witch and gave me black pentagram rock for protection as she knew something very scary was going on. My roommate had a red light on his head and kept asking me to be the third member and walk the lake in MT Shasta. I remember being so terrified. I got on my bike, I rode to my friend's house. I couldn't even sleep there. I went Back the next day, did some laundry. I literally watched an entity walk out of the fireplace. I was scared AF, super scared. They all left for a Grateful Dead show, and it was me and the roommate Bruce, and his eyes went completely black, and he said, "Look in that tree in the backyard, there is an entity that lives in it." I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was terrifying. He also said, "You can never escape us, we are everywhere, and if you tell anybody, we will find you." Long story short, I ran into my room, and as I was gathering my belongings, the door slammed shut. I was so terrified. I grabbed a couple things, left all my other belongings like my nice surfboard, all my nice clothes, and left the shit behind. I grabbed a cross and my backpack and ran as fast as I could to the Best Western in Arcata, took a bus home, and made it home alive. I believe I escaped to some type of satanic cult. Be careful, people.